How did I create this cute dragon and teach it to fly over the medieval city in the air? I started out by taking a picture of a toy dragon on a green piece of poster paper and then clicking select subject and then inverse edit cut to get rid of the background. Then I adjusted the image for exposure and curves to increase the color and the contrast. And then I clicked filter, video, find edges. And that gave me this black and white outline. And then you do select color range shadows. And then you hit modify, select modify, and then expand. And then edit fill. And that will thicken the black lines of your image. Right now I'm using curves, and I'm upping the contrast and doing other things to modify the image so that I get these very distinct black lines. Next, I select all, edit, copy, and I'm going to open up Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to paste my dragon into Illustrator, and then I'm going to do object, image trace, and that will turn it into a smart object. And I'm going to do select all, edit, copy, and I'm going to paste it back into Photoshop. I'm going to rasterize the layer and cut out all the white. And I'm going to put those very distinct black lines right on top of my other image and then merge them down. So I have this very nice black and white crisp design. I'm now going to put in a white background layer underneath, and I'm going to merge the two. So I'm going to have this nice black and white design, very nice crisp linear design. I'm then going to take the magic wand tool, and I'm going to cut the background. So at this point, I'm going to have this black and white dragon with no background, and I'm going to start going into the details and modifying them. I think I'm going to give my dragon some large googly eyes to make him cute. I'm going to clean up some of the extraneous textures that I don't need. I'm going to exaggerate some of the features. I'll switch back and forth between my black and white paintbrush to modify some of the features. And then I'm going to use what's called the puppet warp tool. You just go edit, and one of the choices in the drop down menu is puppet warp. The way the puppet warp works is you drop down these pins. So you drop wherever you're going to pull the object, you drop down a pin to the left and to the right of where you're going to distort the object, and then you drop a pin down in the middle and you pull. And you can distort the object and change the shape. So I've decided I'm going to change the neck of my dragon, and I'm going to change the some of the other details just to give him a little more distinct cartoony look. So I'm doing that with the puppet warp. As you can see, I'm modifying the shapes. And the puppet warp is a very flexible tool. The only thing you have to watch out for is creating little gaps within your image. If that happens, you just use the lasso tool and select them. The other thing you can do, so you're not modifying the entire dragon, is you can use the lasso tool around a small area and then click edit puppet warp and just modify that area so you're not warping the entire figure accidentally. So that's what I'm doing. Now I'm just trying to change the shape, playing around with how the dragon looks. So here I am. I'm going to use the magic lasso tool over a small area of the dragon that I want to modify. And then I'm going to click edit puppet warp and start warping and modifying that area. If there's any holes left, I can always use the magic wand to select those holes, and I can then hit edit, fill, and fill those areas with white. So you can see I can very much have a lot of control over modifying the shape of the dragon to get it to look exactly the way I want it to look. And it's very far from the original toy that I photographed. Now, I could have just drawn the dragon from scratch, but sometimes it's fun to take an existing image and modify it, and it gives you an opportunity to look at things in a way you never have before. So this dragon was taken at a certain angle. I was looking down at it. The legs were in a specific perspective, and it was just a little bit more interesting for me to modify a photograph than it was to draw it, just for the challenge of using some of these new tools in the Photoshop Creative Cloud. So when I'm done, I'm going to select all, edit, copy, paste into Illustrator, and hit Object and do one last image trace, and then copy and paste it back into Photoshop, modify it, paste it down. I'm going to have to rasterize the layer, and then I can use the magic wand tool to take out the background, so I have this white dragon on an empty background. At this point, I want to bring in a more interesting background. So I had this toy castle taken on a piece of green poster board, and I deleted the green background, so I just had the castle by selecting subject, and I also used the magic wand to get rid of the green background. I'm going to bring in a sky also that I had for my camera roll, and I put them together and played around with them a little bit. And once I had the background that I wanted to go ahead and color the dragon. So I'm going to select highlights, hiding the other layers. I just have the dragon, and I'm hitting edit, cut, and I'm creating another layer underneath, and I'm hitting deselect and then reselect, and that just has the effect of selecting only the area where the white was, but on the layer below the black lines. And when I go to color, it's impossible to color outside the lines because the only area that's selected is the area where the white was. So I can just really quickly sweep in the color of the green, and then I'm going to choose a slightly darker shade of green to do the edges, and then an even slightly darker shade of green to do the shadows. If I wanted to get real fancy, I could add in some highlights. I'm adding a little bit of white for the eye. If I hide the layer of the black lines, you'll see that underneath it is a completely independent layer of just the color. When I am satisfied, I'm going to merge those two layers, and then I'm going to start moving the background a little bit. And I'm going to create a folder on my desktop, and I'm going to save each image as a PNG. So I'm going to move the background slightly and save each frame as a new PNG, starting with 01, 02, 03, all the way up to 09. When I get to the 10th frame, I can just name it 10. You have to number them in order, and you have to keep them all in one separate independent folder so they don't get mixed up with other images on your desktop. And this is very, very important for later. So I'm just moving the background. I'm not moving the dragon, but it has the effect of making the dragon look like it's moving. I just go to the layer with the background in it, and I hit the move tool, and I just pull it to the left. So it looks like the dragon's flying forward. And I can do that until I run out of background. My background layer is a little bit bigger than my canvas size, so that gives me a little bit of wiggle room. If you wanted to, you could create a really long background layer, almost like a scroll. But regardless, when I'm done doing that, I'm going to use the puppet warp, and I'm going to reposition my dragon, and then accept the changes and save each frame. By the time I was done, I had about, 40 frames in here. So what I did was I'm using the puppet warp to make the dragon look like it's flying. And then I also used the other transform features. I used the perspective transform feature. I use the size transform feature. I use the distort feature, and I played around with just changing the shape slightly of the dragon each time, and then saving each frame as an independent portable network graphic. And what I ended up with was about 40 frames for this animation. Now you're going to want your timeline to be visible, so you're going to click Windows and check off the timeline so it's visible. And then you're going to hit File, Scripts, Load Images into Stack. And then you're going to have to hit Browse and find all those images. And once you've hit Browse and you've selected all those images, you're going to have to hit Browse again and click the top image, and then hit the Shift key, hit the bottom image, and then you're going to select them again and just load them into a stack. It takes a while for the stack to load. You go down to the timeline and you click Create Frame Animation, and then you hit Create Frames from Layers. And as you can see, I accidentally made my movie backwards, so you can just click again and hit, there's to reverse the slides. So once I've checked out my timeline and made sure that the video is the way I want it, I went up to the top and hit File, Export, Render Video. And here's the final product. It's just a few seconds long. It was a lot of fun to make.